Good afternoon, everyone. I am Suhas Biraj from Department of MCA, MIT Mysore. Respected faculty members, welcome to the fifth day session of 5-day FDP on Introduction to Python, organized by Department of MCA, MIT Mysore. I would like to introduce and welcome today's speaker, Dr. Chandrajit Mohan sir. Dr. Chandrajit Mohan is working as Associate Professor in the Department of MCA, MIT Mysore. He holds a PhD in Computer Science from the University of Mysore. He has more than 12 years of experience in teaching and 3 years of experience in the corporate sector. He has published several research articles in reputed journals and conference proceedings. He has also authored a book titled HTML5, CSS3, JavaScript Made Easy. His research interest is in the area of computer vision and machine learning. He has served as a member of academic bodies in reputed universities like Vishwesvaraya Technological University, University of Mysore. He is also a YouTuber and create content on technology and lifestyle. Now I request Dr. Chandrajit Mohan sir to deliver the lecture on the topic of file handling database. Over to you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Suhas. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. It's my privilege to be a part of this FDP as a resource person as well as the coordinator. So, in this session, I'll be covering file handling, database connectivity, and also I'm going to give you the list of useful libraries that will be useful for developing variety of applications. Let me take you to the agenda. In today's session, we are going to first discuss what, why, and how of file handling, and we are going to do some read and write operations on various kinds of files such as text files, CSV files, binary files, and we are going to talk to the database and perform some operations such as select, create, that is a CRUD operations on database. And as I mentioned earlier, a list of useful libraries will be explained, and that's what Python is popular for. So because of its vast library, Python is useful for variety of application across different streams. Generally, when working with file handling and database connectivity in Python, it is relatively simple compared to other programming language due to its verbose syntax. And for the faculties or for the participants who are aware of PHP, for them, file handling and database connectivity in Python will be a cakewalk. Why? Because it shares the similar syntax. First and foremost, we need to understand what do you mean by file. File is nothing but a place on disk. We can take, for example, a file in our office. Why are we using that file? We are using that file to store some information. Similarly, a file in a computer stores some data, information. It could be multimedia content also. Or file can be used as a data which can be consumed by other kinds of applications. Whenever we are talking about file handling or file, there is always a file type which is nothing but a 3 or 4 characters textual representation of the type of the file. So a file name consists of two parts. One is the name of the file, which is like an identifier, followed by a period, and then we have the file type extension. So .txt means it's a text file, .pdf means it's a portable data format, .png means it's a image file, etc. Why do we require this file type? We require this file type because associated program will be able to recognize that file and do operations on this file. Otherwise, if we don't have the file type, then we will not be able to use appropriate programs, or the data will not be able to be processed. Data has to be input for any kind of language for processing. Similarly, even our Python also supports variety of data input output through its various libraries. That libraries could be internal libraries, or that libraries could be external libraries. And we can perform data input output on a variety of files such as binary files, text files, CSV files, JSON files, Excel files, and also the DBMS. Now we are going to understand why do we require files. Obviously, the first reason is we use the files to store some data or information which could be used for future. And the next usefulness of the file is it is used for processing. So which means that we are using it as an input for processing and generating some information out of it. Now we need to understand what kind of information or data can be stored in the file. So we can store three kinds of information, which is unstructured, semi-structured, and structured. What do you mean by unstructured? Unstructured means the data is not in a particular systematic order or a format. So it is just represented either in the text form or some other form which doesn't follow any strict rules. Whereas semi-structured is nothing but data is stored in some file, but it is following some kind of order or rule or whatever structure. Whereas structured data is nothing but it is stored in a strict syntax, strict systematic rules or protocols. So that's what the difference between unstructured, semi-structured, and structured. Now I have a question for the participants. Can you give example for unstructured data, semi-structured data, as well as structured data? Kindly turn on your mic and you can answer the question so that the session is interactive. I'm expecting some answers. At least one example for unstructured, semi-structured, and structured.
So structured data, we can tell that Excel sheet, whatever we are going to
Yes.
update something data in the Excel sheet. And in unstructured data, we can go with like a word, whatever we type the word.
Yes, sir.
So that can be as a unstructured data. So that's what I think, I guess.
Yes, sir. You are almost correct, sir. Unstructured data you can take, for example, you are typing a message in the WhatsApp chat box. That's an unstructured example.
Yes.
Or it can be a Facebook post. Or as you said, you are typing a paragraph about Mysore or some other information, you are storing it in a text file. That's what unstructured is all about, because we are just haphazardly typing it without following any strict rules or storing the data. Whereas semi-structured, we can take, for example, the comma separated value as example, wherein the data is stored in a text file like unstructured data, but we are using comma as a separator between the words, which is nothing but a kind of rule. So that's what semi-structured is all about. And structured data is nothing but a data which is stored in the database table. So wherein whenever we store a database data in the database table, it will be in the structured form. Why? Because you are specifying the field name, field size, everything, field type, everything. So that's what the three different examples for unstructured, semi-structured, as well as structured. I hope all of you have understood the concept of structured, semi-structured, as well as unstructured. Now we are going to see how actually files are organized. See, files are organized obviously in the directories of your file system or the computer. Take for example student.txt. It's a notepad file, okay, text file, which is stored in admin folder, or you can call it as a directory. Admin is residing in the user folder or user directory, and then it is residing in the C drive of your computer. So this entire what you call textual information is called as the file path, and it is based on the operating system. So for our Windows operating system, you can notice it is a backward slash we are using. For Linux operating system, we are using a forward slash. So the same student.txt is residing in the admin is there in the home. So this is what the file path all about. So where we are storing the file in our computer, that's what the file path is all about. Now one important concept with respect to the file path is the absolute path or the relative path. Generally most of the textbooks when we are working with when we are working with file handling or whatever related to data processing, they will not talk about the file path, absolute path and relative path, which is very important. See, the absolute path and relative path information is very important because whenever we are accessing the file, we need to specify the path. So what kind of path is suitable for what kind of application, we are going to discuss now. See, absolute path is nothing but a path which contains all the list of directories from the root till the file name. So it contains all the information for that particular file. It lists of all the directories. Whereas the relative path is related to the current working directory or the current folder where you are working. Suppose the current working directory is Windows, then if you want to access calc.exe, directly you can access. Take for example, there is one more folder inside Windows and you call that folder as my folder. Then if your current working directory is Windows, to access calc.exe, you have to say /myfolder/calc.exe. Now you may have a question, which one to use? Generally, whenever we are going for practical applications, we will always go with the relative path, not the absolute path. Why? Because absolute path, in your machine you are storing the file calc.exe in C drive, but it need not be in the server. In the server it is having a different file structure, so you always have to go with the relative path when working with files. Now, as I discussed about the current working directory, I have to talk about the OS module supported by the Python for getting information about some kind of OS functionalities. So if you want to know the current working directory in Python, you have to import OS. So os.getCUWD will give you the information about the current working directory. I will not run the program. I have given the output as it is because it was already discussed by Professor Mahalakshmi in the previous sessions. I have to mention there are some other important functions belonging to the OS module like remove, rename and all those things which you might need while you are developing application for renaming a file or deleting a file. So I hope you have got the picture about the OS module. Now we are going to see some different types of operations we can perform on file. Take for example a file, a physical file in your office. When you have that file with you, what are the operations you can do with that file? You can open that file. You can open that file for reading, or you can open that file for writing. You can open that file for appended writing. You can open that file to delete some sheets in that or cut off some sheets in that. So these are the operations you perform on a physical file. Similarly, the same way in our file system, we can also perform such kind of operations. The create, you can open the file, you can create a new file, you can read a file, you can modify the contents of a file, you can open a file in order to make the contents available to other programs. For this, I would like to give an example. You open a file that is a comma separated file, and that value, whatever the contents in that, has to be processed by a comma separated value kind of library. Otherwise, it will not be able to read and write. So that data you are giving as input, you are opening the file, and contents is made available for other programs to make it usable. Then we have what is called as writing the data to a file. So you want to write some data into the file. Then we have closing or termination of the file, which means that after performing an operation on a file, you need to gracefully close it or terminate it. So this is what the various kinds of operations in the file. Now we'll move on to the next slide. Here we are going to learn what is the function supported by Python for opening a file. We have the function named open, which takes majorly two parameters. Other parameters also there like encoding and all, which we will discuss a bit later when we are working with binary files. See, the open function takes two parameters. The first parameter is the path and the second parameter is the mode. What is this path? The path we just discussed previously, that is nothing but the path or the file path, right? And mode is nothing but for what kind of operations you want to open, whether you want to open the file for a reading mode, whether you want to open the file for writing or appended writing mode, or you just want to create a new file. So that mode represents the operation. Now, when you say when you see the syntax here, we have file variable is equal to open, path, and mode. So when this function executes, obviously it is returning some value to the LHS, that is file variable. What is that kind of file LHS? The LHS is kind of an object, in particularly in Python. You can also call it as a file handle, you can call it as a file variable, or you can also call it as a file pointer. So generally in C programming language, we call it as a file pointer. So here f is nothing but a file object. To again understand in depth, f is nothing but a variable that is accessing your file which is outside the program. So when we execute this program, there is a connection that is established. So whenever you are referring f, it means that you are working with this particular file called student.txt, which is residing in the C drive. I hope you have understood the concept of open function. Now we are going to see the different types of files. What are those? One is called as the text file, another is called as the binary file. To make it simple, the human readable file is called as the text file and the non-human readable file is called as a binary file. Basically, binary file stores information in the form of bytes. I hope you have understood. Now we have to see where these T and B letters will be used. As you can see in this example, so R represents you are opening the file for read mode, and then the next character represents the type of the file. Suppose you mention it as T, it is nothing but a text file. Suppose you mention it as B, it is a binary file. And also, if you don't mention anything and just say R, it means that you are opening a text file. That's what the default means. Now we are going to see the different modes of opening a file. What the table I am presenting here contains complete information about the various operations you can perform on various modes of file opening, right? So R is nothing but read mode. What does it do? Does it create a new file? No, it doesn't create a new file. Neither it overwrites the existing contents. And the position of the file pointer will be in the beginning. Now you may have a question, what do you mean by file pointer? File pointer, you can consider it as a cursor which is inside the file. So that cursor is nothing but it will be a reference where you have to either read or write or do some kind of operations, right? If you open a file in W mode, which is nothing but write mode, it creates a new file and also it overrides the existing contents, which means that whatever the contents was there earlier, it will be lost. Now the file pointer will be there in the beginning of the file. Next we'll see A mode. A mode is nothing but appended writing mode. Here we are not losing the existing contents, we are retaining the existing contents, and then we are going to write the next contents after the end of that file. So which means that it will create a new file if the file is not available, and it will not overwrite the existing file contents, and the file pointer will be there in the end of the file. That's what the appended mode is all about. Now we'll understand R plus, W plus as well as A plus. What does plus means? As you all know, plus means you are giving some additional powers. What is that additional power in the case of file mode? See, additional power is nothing but it can be opened for reading as well as writing. Alright, so when you open this file for reading, it will not create a new file, neither it will overwrite the existing contents, but you can be able to write the contents into the file, and the file pointer will be there in the beginning of the file. Next you have the W plus, which is again both read as well as write. Here it creates a new file and it overwrites the existing file, and the file pointer will be there in the beginning of the file. Then we have A plus. This also opens a new file if the file is not there, and it will not overwrite the existing contents because it is opened in the appended writing mode, and the file pointer will be there in the end of the file. Then we are going to see X and X plus, which is rarely used. So X is nothing but you are creating a new file. X in an exclusive mode. What does this mean? X in exclusive mode means, am I lost?
No, sir.
Oh, all right, all right.
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
Okay. X is nothing but you are opening the file in the exclusive mode, wherein if a file is already exists, it will not allow you to create a new file, and overwriting existing file does not belong to this particular mode, and the file pointer will be there in the beginning. X plus is again additional powers you are giving. It can be opened for reading, created a new file for reading as well as writing. So when will you use X? Suppose you want the data to be written in separate files. In the sense, every time a new file has to be created for writing the data into it. So in that scenario, you might use X or X plus. I hope the participants have understood completely all the modes of file operations. Now I'll move on to the next slide. Here, as I mentioned, when you establish a connection with the file residing in your computer or to a variable in your Python using the open method, you are referencing that file, right, as an object. The F becomes the file pointer, becomes the file object. So when we talk about object consists of functions and parameters, or also called as attributes. So the file attributes are name, mode, encoding as well as closed. So name is nothing but it returns the name of the file. Suppose the name of the file is student.txt, it will just give you the output as student.txt. Suppose the mode of the file you are opening is R, it will return R as output. Now we are seeing a different attribute which is called as encoding, which means that how the text in the file is, or not text, how the data in the file is stored. Whether it is stored in ASCII format, unified text format, it depends on the operating system. Alright, so that's what encoding all about. Then the last attribute is the closed, which is a Boolean attribute which returns true if the file is closed. This attribute you might require sometimes to cross verify whether the file has been closed or not. So these are the file attributes. Now we will see the read operation. What I will do is I will complete all the functions and then I will take you to the practical demonstration. So here we are going to see the various functionalities for reading. As you can see, you can read the entire contents, or you can read only part of the file contents, or you want to read only the first line contents, or you want to read all the lines content. As I mentioned, the functions are very easy to remember and also very easy to work. So the read function, it reads the entire file contents and returns as a string, whereas read n returns n characters and returns as a string. So each character is represented as a 1 byte information. Then we have read first line. read line. This reads the first line and returns a string, whereas read lines reads multiple lines of the program of the file and returns as a list. So you need to understand, so it returns a list. I hope you have understood. Now we will see the next operation, which is nothing but the write operation. So in the write operation, we are seeing two functions. One is the write contents and write lines. So write contents takes a string information or any kind of textual information, and then it writes into the file. Write lines accepts a sequence kind of argument, and then it writes that many number of lines into the file. So we can use either write or write lines for multiple lines in this cases. Now here I have given some example. F dot write my first line slash n. F dot write this file slash n. F dot write contains 3 lines slash n. So this, if I execute these 3 lines of code, 3 lines, my first line, this line will be typed into the file or written into the file. Now you may be wondering, or you may ask a question, why this slash n is required. This slash n is required just because to indicate the end of the line character. So which means that if we don't have the slash n, the lines will be written adjacent to each other, so you will not be able to differentiate between these 3 lines. So you require slash n. Then I've created a list here, and this list contains some 3 or 4 elements, and these elements are directly written into the file altogether by using write lines. You can see slash n appended here also, because we want the information to be written line by line. So this is what the operation of write operation of file. Now we are going to see file close operation. So the function to use is the close function. So yeah, it is associated with the f variable, a file variable. So file variable dot close will close the file. Now what happens is, whenever you have opened a file using f is a file variable is equal to open, and then perform some operations, and you terminate the file or close the file gracefully by using close function. Suppose there is a runtime error encountered or some problem encountered while executing the file after it has been opened. Then what happens is, the opened file will not be able to be accessed by other applications, because another application which halted due to various reasons is still having the control for that particular file. So we need to gracefully close the file. So always, whenever you are performing file operations, it's always good to close the file with the help of close operation. Otherwise, when you terminate the program, it will close by itself, but still you have to gracefully close it. Now another efficient way for closing a file is using the with statement. So the with statement, what it does is, it handles if abnormal termination happens after the file has been opened and you are performing some operation. So it gracefully closes the file on its own. You don't need to specify the close function in this scenario. Even if you have it, it is fine, but it is not required. Now I have a question for the participants. What is another way in which you can gracefully close the file or gracefully handle the situation if some error occurs in between, if some problem occurs in between? I hope you have understood the question. Participants, friends, colleagues, you are online, or am I lost?
Sir, you're online.
Okay. Did you understand?
You can continue, sir.
Okay. I believe nobody understood my question. The question is, how do you gracefully close the file if some termination happens in between? You can gracefully close the file using the exception handling scenario, okay, or exception handling technique. That is nothing but the try catch. Okay, so this is what the answer I was expecting. Now we will go to the practical session. I will open the idle. I hope my screen is visible. Is the font size okay? Do I need to enlarge it?
No, sir, it's okay.
Okay. Now we are opening a file and then we are just closing a file using W mode. Okay. So let me execute it. Now you can see we have the attribute f.name displayed. Okay. Now what I will do is I'll display some more attributes. Print f.mode, print f.encoding, okay, and print f.closed. You can notice the output. The first attribute gave me the name of the file. Second attribute gave me the mode of the file. The third attribute gave me the encoding of file data, and the fourth attribute is giving me true, which means that file has been closed. Now I'm going to comment this line and again rerun it. You can notice now I'm getting a boolean value false because the file has not been closed. Okay, so this is what the various attributes and how do you open the file. Now I'm going to execute one more program, read file. Okay, so let me take you to the lines of the program. We are opening a file student.txt in R plus mode. That's nothing but we are opening for both reading and writing. What I'm doing is I'm writing some lines of code in this, and then I'm moving the file pointer to the back. So I'll explain to you what is fseek and ftell in the next slide. What is zero means? Zero means we are moving the file pointer back to the beginning of the file. Why? Because we have written some line of characters here. So file will be in the end of the file, pointer will be there in the end of the file. So we will, if we read anything, it will read nothing, right? It will read nothing because that will be the end of the file. So here we have variables called a, b and c. What I'm doing here is a is reading the first line of the file, and again I'm moving back the file pointer to the beginning of the file, and then I'm using f.read here. So b is having the entire file contents. Again I'm moving back the contents to the not the contents, moving back the file handler to the beginning of the file, and then I'm reading the lines, all the lines, multiple lines of the file, and assigning to C. Now C is nothing but a list, A is a string, B is also a string. Now I'm printing all the A, B, C's, and then along with that I'm printing the type also. What is the data type of A, B and C? And then I'm printing f.tell, which gives me the current file pointer location. So let me execute this. You can notice first line is been printed, that is A's content. Then it is telling me the data type is string. Then I am printing all the lines. It has got two lines, so first line and second line, and then we have the what is called as the list, which has read all the lines of the file, and then you can notice list as the data type. Now 25 is the value which returned FTEL, which was returned by FTEL. What does it mean? 25 in the sense all these whatever first line and second line, including the slash n, whatever it is summing up to 25. So that's what the 25 all about. Now we will see the next example. Write file. So here we are opening one more file, student._w.txt in write mode, and then we are writing some 2 lines of the codes, so two lines of sentences here, and then we have initialized a list with 1 2 3 some 3 elements, and then we are using write lines to write all these lines into the file, and then we are closing this particular file. This program will not give us any output, we'll just execute it. Now we will go to the folder and see what is the contents of the file, student_w.txt. You can notice first line, second line, 1 2 3 has been written. So this is what the write operation. All the programs whatever I have been discussing will be shared with you. Now we will open the file in the appended writing mode. So we are going to open the same file in A+ mode. Now what we are doing is we are creating one more list and assigning some elements into it, and then we are using write lines and lines, and then we are bringing back the file cursor back to the beginning of the file, and then we are reading the entire contents and closing the file. So let me execute this. You can notice first line 1 2 3 and 4 5 6, all the things has been returned by the read which is there in the file. So this is what the appended writing mode all about. Now we will see one more example. Here what we are going to do is we are going to solve one problem. So we are going to read a file and display the count of words in the file, and also display all the words which is there in the file. So for this we are opening the file in read mode, since we are just doing a read operation, and then we are going to read the entire contents of the file and assign it to a data, one variable called data, and then we are going to use the string split function to split it whenever there is a space, and assign it to words list, which is nothing but a list, and then in order to display total number of words in this particular file, just we have to call the length function. All this was discussed earlier, the string function by Sharat sir. Print total number of words will give you the number of words, and I'm displaying the type of the words, which just to show you what is there in what is the data type of that variable. So let me execute this. You can notice it is a list and there are 288 words, and the data type is also list. Now in the same program file I have stored one more program. Here we are doing one more task. we are asking the user a word to be input, and then we are finding out the occurrence of that word in this particular file, how many times that word is repeated. So let us run. I'll just brief about the lines of code. So we are opening the file. Sorry, first we are accepting the word from the user, what word the user has to find in that particular file. Then we are opening the file, we are reading the contents of the file, and then we are converting the data what has been input by the user to lowercase, just to make sure both have been taken into count. And then we are using count function and passing the search word count, and we are assigning it to the word count. So this word count will have the count of that particular number of words in this file. So you can notice, one second, it is asking for input. Since I have increased the font size, I'm not able to. Yes, I'll give off. How many times or the is repeated? The word the is repeated 21 times. So this is one simple problem we have solved. So likewise, we can also solve a problem to display the frequency table of the words. For this, we can use dictionary data type of the Python. Now we will go back to our presentation. I hope all of you have understood the programs discussed so far. Now we are going to see the two functions which are associated with the file pointer. One is called as the seek, another is called as a tell. Already we have seen how it works. Seek function is used to move the file pointer wherever you want in the file. Once again, I'm going to explain. Seek function is used to move the file pointer wherever you want the cursor to be in that particular file. So it accepts two parameters. One is the offset, another is the whence. Offset is nothing but how many number of characters you want to move, whereas whence is nothing but it takes either 0, 1 or 2. 0 meaning beginning of the file, 1 meaning current location, and then 2 meaning end of the file. Suppose I give an example, seek 10, 0. It means that I have to move the file pointer 10 places or 10 characters after the beginning of the file. Suppose I take the same example, seek 10, 1. So if the cursor is there in the 15th character position, then it will move 10 characters from that 15th character, and then file cursor will be placed in that particular location. I hope you have understood the seek function, and I have also explained to you how to use that seek function. Now we will see the tell function. Tell function is nothing but it will just give me where the current cursor is blinking. For example, if I say where is Chandrajit sitting right now, so the answer would be media cell of MIT Mysore. So that's what ftell does in the case of file. It gives us information about the current file location in the form of bytes. As I told you, each character is a byte information. Hope you have followed. Now we are going to see a different kind of file operation, which is nothing but binary file operation. Here I have just mentioned only two modes of operations, R as well as W, but you can use the same all the modes what we have already discussed in the previous tabular explanation. All right, so RB and WB means we are opening the file for reading, which is a binary file. WB means we are opening the file for writing a binary file. So what is the difference between binary file and a text file? The text file is human readable. Binary file, the data is there in the bytes information, not a human readable. So therefore, you might have to do some kind of encryption decryption kind of scenario. Here we call it as encoding and decoding to understand what exactly the contents of the file. So will execute one program in this. So here I'm opening a file called bfile.bin. Bin stands for a binary file. I'm opening in W, that is write mode, and again it is given, it can be opened even for read mode. So what is that message? A message is hello Python, I want to write into that particular file. As I told you, encoding and decoding has to be performed. So I want to encode this file as a ASCII, and I want to write the I'm writing the content into the file, and I'm bringing back my file pointer to the beginning of the file to read the contents from the beginning, and then I'm printing the content of that file as it is, and then another variable I've assigned here. I'm decoding the ASCII value and then displaying the content so that it is normal data. Now let me run this program. Now you can notice the difference. This hello Python is there, but it's a binary content, whereas this is a normal content. To make you understand even better, I'll take one more example. Here we are opening one more file called bin file, right? So we have taken a list of numbers and we are converting that list as a byte array, and we are writing that content into the file using fwrite and closing that file. Again we are opening, since I have not used the W plus, I'm just showing you another way of working with file. I'm opening the same file in read mode and reading the contents and displaying all the contents of that particular file. So let's execute this program. So now we got the information, but when you go and see the file, open with Notepad, you can see the file contents is non-human readable form. Okay, this is what the binary file is all about. So you also have to keep in mind one thing: when you are working with binary file, we don't require /n. New line character is not at all required when working with the binary file, so you have to keep that in mind. Now we are going to see CSV file operation. So in this until now we were working with the text file as well as binary file. Now we are seeing a different kind of file, a CSV file. What is a CSV file? CSV stands for comma separated values. Why this CSV is required? See, CSV file is a semi-structured data representation format which is there as equivalent to a tabular format. Why this CSV is required? See, CSV is required as it is simpler to transfer the file from one machine to another machine. Easy to transfer the file from one machine to another machine. That's what the advantage of CSV file is. Suppose you are storing the data in a database table and you want to transfer that data database table into another machine. So what you have to do, you cannot simply just copy and paste it. You have to do some kind of operation. What is that? You have to export that database and then a file will be generated. That file you have to copy and paste it in another computer or transfer using internet, and then you have to use the same application to import that file and load it into your DBMS. So it's a difficult for transferring data and using it. Whereas CSV, since it is a textual kind of information, it will be very easy for data transmission and data representation, or also data storing. So you just need a simple API or application to read CSV files. So normal text file with additional what you call functionality to read a CSV is sufficient to read a CSV. Generally, when you are working with data science, most of the data set will be stored in the form of CSV. I hope you have encountered when you are working with data science projects. Now, in this particular session, I'm going to demonstrate to you two kinds of ways in which you can work with the CSV files. The one is the CSV reading and writing operation using the pandas library. Pandas is nothing but Python for data analysis, which I will be discussing in the later part of this session. So here it's very easy. We are only using read CSV and to CSV to write the file. Read CSV will read the file, and then on the left hand side you require a variable. The variable is of type a data frame or a series, whatever you are storing, the whatever LHS you want to store. So pandas has two data structure, one is the series and data frame, which we'll discuss later. Then the data frame to CSV will just simply write the file and create a CSV file. So whatever is there in the data structure, that will be written to a CSV file. You have to just pass the what you call parameters. First parameter is the name of the file, path of the file. Second parameter is the index. Index represents the index column. So index can be true or false. In this case, we are keeping it as false because we don't want the index also to be written in the CSV file. And columns is nothing but a attribute where you can give a list of column names or the field names which you want particularly to be written into a new file. So the read CSV file is there, right? And this file, function, this function has got nearly 20 to 25 parameters. So we are not working with all the parameters. Based on the requirement, we will be using the attributes of the function. So another way of working with CSV file is the inbuilt or the local module called the CSV module. So you have to just import the CSV module. In this case also, first you have to import pandas, then only you are able to access all this. Already it has been discussed in the functions by modules by Mahalakshmi madam. So CSV, when you import, it allows you to have different kinds of functions to work with the CSV. You have the reader and the writer. Okay, so writer in the sense, reader is for reading the data from the CSV file, and writer or write row or write rows is used to write back the contents as a CSV file. So what you have to understand is the CSV reader returns an iterator, which means that it returns a CSV reader object. So for that, if you want to process all the rows, then you have to use a looping statement to read all the rows one by one. So this is what the CSV reading and writing all about. Now we'll demonstrate one example. Let me first explain the pandas style of reading and writing CSV. So it's very easy. So Python itself is full of functions. Whatever you want to do, you can do it with minimum lines of code. So here we are importing pandas and keeping alias as PD. This is the standard form. Wherever they are using pandas, they are aliasing it as PD. Then pd.read_csv, iris.csv, we are using relative path as I explained to you earlier. And then it is returning a we are storing it as a data frame, that is a data structure in pandas. Then we are printing the first 5 rows of the data frame using the head method. So similarly you have tail method. Suppose you want to display 100 rows, you have to just pass the argument 100 here, like that. All right. Now to convert or to write a CSV file, so what we are doing is whatever we are storing in the data frame, we are converting it and storing it as a CSV. The name of the file is now myiris.csv. I am using the iris data set. Then columns is equal to ID, comma species. I don't want all the columns to be written. I want only the specific columns to be written into the CSV file, and index I'm passing it as false. Just I don't want even the index to be written. I'll show you what you mean by index now. So this program might take some time to execute because it has to load the pandas. Okay, now you can see we have got the first 5 rows of this particular data set, which is the iris data set. Here you can see 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 is nothing but the index. This is nothing but the column names. Okay, this are nothing but the rows. So the Python pandas library has got a data structure called data frame. It contains 3 parts of information. One is the column information, row information, and index information for the data what you have read. So it is a 2-dimensional data structure which can store heterogeneous kind of data, in the sense mixed data type of data. So this is what the way in which this is you read and write a CSV file using pandas. I hope it is very easy, and all the participants are able to follow the examples. Now it is 5 minutes past 3. I will be a bit fast from here onwards because I also would like to present to you a mini project on simple data science, supermarket data analysis, so that this project will give you a rough idea about how the Python is used for one kind of application, and it will do justice for our FDP also. Now here you can see compared to our pandas, this has got more number of code lines. So generally when I'm working with the CSV file, I always use pandas as library because it's relatively easy when I don't use the inbuilt library. But suppose you don't have inbuilt pandas installed in your machine, you can use the inbuilt library CSV. So here we are using the fopen. I have given you an example in the beginning why file is used. It can be used for taking the data and giving it for other kind of application. So we are creating a reader object and using the reader method, and as I told you, it's a iterator. When it is an iterator, you can use the next method to move to the next rows of that particular iterator to point to the next header row, to be precise. And we are initializing a list as a null, and then what we are doing is we are storing all the data read from this CSV file into a list and displaying it. So we are appending the list one by one after reading it. And then to write the CSV file, again what we are doing is we are opening the file, another file myiris3.csv, and I'm passing argument as w as write mode, new line as nothing. Why I require this new line as nothing? See, if I do not mention this new line, then what happens is you will find one new line after writing every row. So one new line will be there, new line in the sense one blank line will be there. I don't want any blank line in between. I want all the rows to be next to each other. So that's the reason I have to pass this argument. If I don't pass, you can, when I send this code, you can test what happens if you don't use this. All right, next we have the fields. I'm just passing a list into this to just give the name of that particular columns. So I'm populating a two-dimensional list here. I'm saving name, branch, year, and CGPA information of multiple students. Now I'm using the CSV writer function and writing the first what you call the I'm not writing, sorry, I'm assigning the what you call file handle using the file which has been opened, FW, and then CSV writer. From here onwards I'll be using the CSV writer object, and write row is the name of the function to write the first row. First row is nothing but the column names, here fields, and then I'm writing all the rows by using write rows, which is in the plural form, and closing this particular file. So let me execute this. So you can see quizzed text 125 lines. So if I double click, I can see all the 125 rows of that particular data set. Now the file has been created. I will open the folder. So my iris, if you see here, you can notice it's a comma separated value. Okay, I'll enlarge it. So this is what I have just written into the file. Hope you have followed. The header has been written and all the rows. I forgot to show you the output of pandas. I had only used the rows, columns, ID and species. So it's only copied ID and species out of the 6 columns in the iris dataset. Okay. Now we'll go back to our presentation. So we have successfully understood the concepts of file handling, and we have understood how to read and write text files, comma separated value files, as well as binary files. Now we are going to learn how to work with database in our Python. So first and foremost, we need a DBMS. So like MySQL, Oracle, and we need an interface. That interface is nothing but like a module which is linking, or which is bridging between the DBMS and the Python. So using that bridge, we are able to use the functions for talking to the database and perform operations such as create, insert, delete, all the operations we can perform. So in this session, I'm going to demonstrate to you how to work with MySQL database, and I'm using XAMPP as the database server, which is nothing but a stack. Actually, it is not a database server, it's a stack. So XAMPP stands for X stands for Windows, A stands for Apache server, M stands for MySQL, and P stands for PHP, and another P stands for Perl. So that's what the XAMPP is all about. So if you are not aware of XAMPP, what is XAMPP all about, I will share you a video about XAMPP installation and working with DBMS and working with PHP, so that you will be able to understand the concepts of web application development using XAMPP. Now we need to import the interface. As I told you, the interface is nothing but an API to work with the DBMS. So here, since we are using MySQL, you have to import MySQL connector, MySQL.connector. Suppose you are using Oracle, you have to use some the connector, or the interface associated with the Oracle. So you cannot use the same connector for all kinds of DBMS. Once again, I'm going to quote and unquote, you cannot use the same connector or the interface for all kinds of DBMS. It is specific to the DBMS. Now this MySQL connector has got various kinds of methods and properties. The very first method is the connect kind of method, which is used to establish connect to your DBMS. So DBMS host is nothing but the local host, the server name where the DBMS is located, and the username is nothing but the username what you are using, and then the password for the what do you call the server, whether you have a password for the server. I have missed one more function attribute here, database name. So but in the code I have specified. I'll make the correction here. So you should also specify the name of the database. Otherwise you can specify in separately, but it's always good to give the connection information in this particular function itself. So like file handle, mydb is now the handle to work with the database. So based on this particular mydb, you will be associating with the dbms in your Python program. Now we will see the important functions which you will use to work with the dbms. The very first function is the cursor. What is this cursor? This cursor is nothing but a space to run and execute your dbms. Alright, so it is nothing but a space to run and execute. Again, you can consider it as some kind of an object, but again it is associated with your file handle or the dbms handle mydb. Alright, these are all variable names. You can change it as and when you wish, I mean however you feel. Now next function is the execute function. So here you use this function to execute the SQL statements or SQL statements. So if I say cursor object dot execute select star from table name, that will be executed. Next we have function called fetch all, which is nothing but after you execute a select statement, so the number of rows will be returned, right? Many number of rows. So all these rows will be returned using the fetch all, which is again a kind of a iterator. So you need to iterate with the results because there will be multiple rows. Suppose you want to just fetch only one information. For example, you are writing a select query to which will fetch only one record, then you will use fetch one function, so which will return only a single tuple, not a iterator kind of object. Then commit is a function which is very necessary when you are working with MySQL. So after you do some kind of operations like insert, delete or update, to make it what you call permanent in the database, you have to use commit statement, and it is not associated with the cursor object, it is associated with the database object. So keep this in mind. Sometimes there will be confusion. Even I also get confused sometimes, because there are a lot of functions. You cannot humanly possible to remember all kinds of functions, so you have to use the references. Then the last function is the, so I forgot, rollback. Rollback is used to roll back the transaction. This is just the DBMS terminology what you have learned already in your DBMS. Then the close function is used for closing the connection. Here what we are doing is we are gracefully closing the connection. Already I have discussed what exactly this how it works and what are the implications if you don't close the DBMS or a file. Now we will go to the demonstration. So now I need to first switch on the server. So I am using XAMPP. Here you need to click on start. If you are not aware of this, not to worry, I will share the video so that you will be able to understand. So I have started Apache and MySQL. So if it comes in green, it means that we have the what you call both the functionalities working fine. So we are good to go. Now I'll minimize it. I'll go to the browser. Here I'll open one more tab. Here I'll type http/localhost. Okay, so if this welcome screen appears or welcome page appears, it means that the Apache server has executed, is running, and you can run and execute your web application. Now click on PHP MyAdmin to open the MySQL DBMS. So here, if you want to create a database, you have to just click on this particular new, and these are what you see over here is the database which is already created. Now I'll click on new, and here in the text box I'll write example 3 and I'll click on create button. It will automatically create a database table. Of course, you can write SQL also to create the database table by clicking on this tab, but I'm just going with the GUI based of syntax. Now to create a table, I'm just giving the name of the table as student, because all my examples which I've already run and executed has the same name. So, and it contains 3 columns. I'm just specifying the column names and click on go. Now you got an interface. Here you have to just type the name of the fields. Here I'll type USN. I'll select varchar. I'll select length as 10. I'll make this as primary. Click on go. Next sname. I'll select this also as varchar. I'll give the length as 20. Next branch. Again varchar. I'll give the branch size as 5, and now I'll click on save. Now you can see the database table has been created, and you can notice the key symbol here, which means that the USN is nothing but, or the register number is not a primary key. So now we are not going to bother about this. This is where we just created the database. Now we'll go to our Python program now. Open database, insert. Okay, now you can see I'll reduce the font size. Okay, is it visible, or you want me to increase the font size?
It's visible, sir.
Okay. So now we need to import the MySQL using MySQL connector, right? Then we will create a variable. As I told you, it's a handle of the database. So MySQL connector, connect method, host is the local host, username is root because that's the default user, and password is nothing, and name of the database is example 3, right? So password is nothing. If you want to set the password, you have to set it in the XAMPP settings, not here. Okay. Then print mydb will give me the information about the database object which we have just initialized. Then we are creating a cursor. As I told you, cursor is the space for executing your DBMS, right? Queries, SQL queries. So my cursor is the cursor now. I'm just taking 3 variables A, B, C, and storing some values. You can pass this as a string, or because I've selected it as a varchar. Okay, now I'm inserting these values into the database table using insert statement. I'm creating a SQL statement, insert into student values, percentages, and percentages, and the values are nothing but ABC, which is nothing but a tuple. Okay, which is nothing but a tuple since it is round bracket. Then execute function is taking the SQL what is there here and the values. So whatever values you pass here, that will be stored here, executed, and you are using mydb.commit to commit the database. And then we are executing one more query, directly select star from student and fetching the result using the fetch all method. And since it is an iterator, you are using a loop to display all the records. So here I have explained, here I have commented one line of code to show you. Suppose you want to just insert one value like this in the same statement, in the execute statement, you can do it this way also. Okay, let me execute this and see whether it will execute or not. Yes, so 129 and MCA has been inserted into the database. So now you have understood the database insert operation. Now we will see the next operation, update. So once you do insert operation, rest of the things are same. Only thing is you need to only change the sequence. That's it. So here we are again connecting the same thing we are using up to here. We are accepting the branch name of the user, and then we are writing a SQL. In this SQL we are using you are attaching the branch name here itself, and for USN 128, I think it is 129. Yes, I have to make it as 129. Then execute the SQL, commit and row count. Row count will give me the affected rows out after this execution of this execute statement. So row count is a property associated with my the cursor object, so which gives me the row count of the affected number of rows. In this case it will be 1, I believe. So my cursor dot execute, select star from student and display the results in the same way. Let me execute this. I'll give the branch name as BCA now. Now you can notice from MCA it has been changed as BCA. So update is perfectly fine. Now we will see the last operation, that is the delete operation. So here we are deleting the USN number 129 using the same select. I'm not doing any kind of changes here. I'm just changing the SQL. That's it. That's why in the beginning only I mentioned that working with DB and file is very easy in Python. So F5 to execute. So you can notice -1, the one row has been executed. So even if we display the result, nothing is been displayed because there is no rows in the database table. We are just inserted only one row. So friends, I have explained to you now the database operations in Python. Now we are going to the last part of our presentation. So I have to be a bit quick from here since we have to have a validatory function also. See, Python is full of libraries. Python gained popularity because of its library and its open source nature. See, whenever you are working with any kind of application, if there are supported libraries, building an application or solving a problem becomes a bit easy. Coming from the research background, see, whenever you want to apply, solve a problem, if everything you have to write on your own, it takes a lot of time for you to first write the functions and then use it, and sometimes it might not work also. But when there are inbuilt libraries, your only aim is to solve the problem by using the existing. Why you have to invent the wheel when already it is there? So that's what the popularity of Python all about. So Python supports variety of libraries, and I have just mentioned some of them. There are many more which I may also not aware of because it's a ocean, right? So but I'm giving a list which is really very important, and you can refer any websites or any applications. They will definitely use these for sure. So which is nothing but pandas, numpy, matplotlib, seaborn, scikit-learn, tensorflow, keras, etc, etc. So we'll see one by one what are all these things. So pandas is a must and should installed library in your machine because it is used for data analysis. So those who want to work with data analysis or any machine learning, they have to use pandas library. So it has got a lot of functions for descriptive statistics, data transformation. Those who have knowledge of data mining, they will be available. They will be aware of what do you mean by data cleaning, data transformation, plotting, etc. So you can load all types of data like CSV, JSON, etc. We already seen how to load a CSV file and work with CSV file in the pandas. And I also mentioned the two data structures are there in the pandas. One is called as the series, another one is called as the data frame. So it's all heterogeneous. Next is the NumPy. So NumPy is similar to pandas. Actually, pandas is sitting on top of NumPy. So NumPy, what exactly it does is it is working with arrays. So whenever you want to work with arrays, you will use definitely NumPy. The main advantage of the NumPy arrays and the normal arrays is its exceptional speed. So it is 50 times faster compared to the normal arrays. So NumPy arrays use ND array as data structure for representing homogeneous. So the difference between pandas and NumPy is pandas is a heterogeneous data structure, whereas NumPy is a homogeneous data structure. Then we have matplotlib and seaborn. After you do some kind of analysis, obviously you have to present it in the appropriate form. It could be a tabular form or it could be visualization in the graphical form. So if you want to go with graphical form, you have to go with either matplotlib or seaborn, or together matplotlib and seaborn. So matplotlib is a basic library. On top of it is the seaborn. So generally what happens is whenever people wants exceptionally visible information in the graph, then they will go with seaborn. So but for basic level, we can use matplotlib library, that is sufficient. So it supports variety of plots such as bar graph, line graph, heat map, histogram, scatter with limited or minimum number of code. And you can also have a lot of flexibility for customization. Next is the TensorFlow and Keras. So this is what the machine learning library all about. So specifically you will be working with deep learning over here. I have personally used Keras. I have not used TensorFlow. Keras is relatively simple. So as I told you, TensorFlow is in the lower in the stack, and Keras is sitting on top of it. So for first level users, Keras is exceptionally easy to understand. So you can see Keras is used to build machine learning models. Google Voice Search, Google Photos are all examples of the Keras, as well as TensorFlow. Next is the scikit-learn. So again, if you want to do any kind of machine learning operations like classification, regression, clustering, regression, time series, etc., you can use the scikit-learn. So it is also used for dimensionality reduction. Next, we have the SciPy. This is used for both signal processing and as well as image processing. And all kinds of statistical operations as mathematical operations can be performed using the SciPy. It has got functionalities. You can use the functionality, build the model quickly. Next is the beautiful soup. So this is one library which is web scraping library. What do you mean by web scraping? Web scraping is nothing but you are taking the contents from the websites available in the internet. Why do we require or why do we want such kind of things? Either you want to create a data set for a problem to be solved, or you want to create a new application for by using existing data. Take for example Trivago. Trivago, what it does is it is just a web scraping kind of application. Trivago fetches the data from multiple websites, travel websites like Make My Trip, etc., and takes the data, do some analysis and gives you the results. So intelligently Trivago is doing the job of data aggregation and giving you the results. And coming to our department, we have already built one application in the using the same web scraping. What we have done is we have fetched the results from the university website. We have to just specify the what do you call the name of the location of the website. Automatically it fetches the results of all the students, and we have written the code to do the analysis. So one click, everything will be done. So no need to scratch our head and do comparative analysis, result analysis, etc. Next, we have the OpenCV. So this is one library which is nostalgic to me because I have used this OpenCV library way back in 2012. So while doing my PhD, so by at that time I was working with C++ with combined with OpenCV, but you can now use OpenCV for Python. And you can do a lot of tasks like tracking, segmentation, detection, semantic segmentation, etc., in OpenCV. So I mean, I want you all to explore all these things, all these libraries, and feel free to contact me anytime if you have any queries. Now we have one more library, another two we have in line. I think we are not running out of time. So Tinker is a library for GUI development. Suppose you want to build a GUI, you can use Tinker. I have not used this particular library, but this is a popular library for building GUI based application. And next is the Django and Flask. These two are different libraries for web application development using Python. Django is model view controller based library module, whereas Flask is a general framework for developing web application. So if you don't want MVC pattern, then you go with Flask. If you want MVC based pattern, then you go with Django. So these are the various kinds of libraries in Python. So now, before going to questions, since we are still having time, I will take you to the project, and then we can conclude. For this, I'm going to open a Jupyter notebook. It will take some time. So all the resource person have introduced to various kinds of IDEs, right from the basic idle IDE. So PyCharm, Spider. Now I'm showing you the Jupyter. So if you want to run and execute chunks of code in Python, then this is the best platform for you. And also this is shareable. You can just share this particular, after writing the code, this is what the notebook is all about. IPYNB is the notebook. If you share this as a you can share this and use it wherever you want. And also, if you are aware of Google Colab, you can load the IPython notebook in the Google Colab and execute it in the cloud. So this is the advantages. Now we are going to see supermarket sales data analysis. So I have downloaded.
Sir, your voice is breaking.
My voice is breaking. 1 second. Now, ma'am. Now, am I audible or lost?
Sir, you are audible now.
Okay, okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. See, here we have a data set of of a supermarket of 2019, right from April to for 1 year data, and we are doing some kind of analysis. What a supermarket owner would like to know, which was the best month of sales, which product is moving
Sir,
faster.
still on my end, your voice is not clear.
Is it, ma'am?
I don't know. From my end,
Maybe.
is anybody else? Is there who can't hear?
I'll just inquire my colleagues. Ma'am, am I audible now? Mahalakshmi ma'am, ನನ್ನ ವಾಯ್ಸ್ ಬ್ರೇಕ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯಾ? My voice is breaking.
No, sir, no, sir.
Ma'am, I feel that there is low network at your end. Don't worry, ma'am. We will
maybe,
record
sir,
this
but,
session and upload it in the YouTube.
Okay, sir, okay.
Don't worry, we'll upload this.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Okay, sure, sir. Sure. Thank you.
See, Python notebook is my favorite. Jupyter notebook, sorry, is my favorite because you can execute part of the code and see the output then and there itself. So here, this is called as a cell, which is called as a code cell. You have markdown, heading, and the raw content. So what you have to do is you have to just markdown is nothing but the text information, like comments. Whereas this is called as a code cell. If you want to add a code cell, you have to click on plus. If you want to cut a code cell, you have to click on cut scissor symbol. If you want to move any code cell up and down, you have to use this. If you want to run a code cell, you have to click on run, or you have to use shift enter shortcut, right? And if you want to clear all the outputs, so if you want to run all the cells, you have to click on this cell and you can see the drop down list menu bar. You can see all the functionalities, right? So now I'll execute one by one. So let me import the pandas. And one advantage of Anaconda is Jupyter comes along with Anaconda. Suppose you install Jupyter, Pandas and all are built in Matplotlib, so don't need to install these libraries. Now I'm reading the CSV file. As I explained to you already, all the CSV files are stored in the data frame. I'm calling it as 1 2 3, and I'm assigning it as I'm also creating one more column called month, Jan, February. There was no month information in this particular data set, so we are creating one more column, and I'm going to execute this. Now we are combining the data set. All the 12 months information we are putting it inside another data frame. Now we are using head method already discussed. So, and info method will give me the information about the data set. It will give me how many rows are there, how many columns are there, all those. So it has got 9,702 entries, and these are the columns, right? And some of them are having not null also, which we will figure it out how to solve it. So this is the top 5 rows of this particular data set. Now you can see month was not there, month we have added now. Then we will see the shape will give me the row size of each of the what you call data frame. Then I'm going to concat it. I'll quickly run through the code. Most of the things are just information. So there are 1,86,850 rows after I concatenated all the month information, right? Next, what are the columns? These are the columns. Info head, I'll skip this. Now we will discuss whether we have null values. So is null is the function. Yes, we have some null values here, and we will drop those null values using drop NA function. So once drop NA function is there, then we'll come to know whether null values are there. See, you can notice that all the null values in the data set is eliminated. Now, after examining the data set, in some of the rows, the quantity ordered, for quantity ordered, the value also is quantity ordered. So we need to eliminate that, because that's a value. If that kind of value is there, then we will not be able to process it. So we are going to check how many rows are there, like that kind. See here, quantity ordered, even the row is also having the same. So these are all junk data, right? We need to eliminate this junk data. So how do we do that? You have to just use this syntax to eliminate it. I'm just going it a bit brief. Then we are done with the elimination. Now we will go with the questions how business will require for functioning. So what was the best month of sales? How much was earned on that month? So for that we are going for the analysis. So what we are doing is we are converting the data type of the quantity ordered and price, because if you want to do some kind of mathematics on that data, we have to bring it to the numeric data. So that's what we are doing. I'll execute this, shift enter for executing. It's giving me a warning. That's okay. Then I'm just displaying number of uniques. I'll share this code also to you. I'm going it a bit fast. So here is the line of code to find out the best sales in the month. So I'm selecting selecting the month, and from the month I'm selecting the sales column, and I'm doing a sum in each month how much sales has been done, and I'm sorting it in descending order, so that if I get it in descending order, I'll come to know the which month did the maximum business. I'll execute this. You can see December did the maximum business. Now what we will do is we will just plot it in a graph using Matplotlib, right? So Matplotlib library is ready. It will take some time to execute. So if you notice, if there is a star, it means that it is executing. So now you can see use only 4 to 5 lines of code, and beautiful graph has been plotted. In this graph you can come to know December was the highest sales of the month. So like this, there are so many questions that can be answered. So I hope I no need to go through all these things. We are right on time to conclude. If any assistance required from my end, I'm there to help anytime. I'll go back to my presentation to say thank you and waiting for any questions. I'll stop the server. Always it's a good practice to stop the server once it is done, and even you have to log out from the IPNB notebook or Jupyter notebook. Any questions? I hope whatever I have conveyed, it has reached you. I've tried my best to convey as simple as possible, and I hope all the audience had a great learning experience throughout this FTP. Thank you very much. I request all the audience to stay online because we will be going for the valedictory function. So I request all the participants to be online. And feedback link will be
Thank
shared
you.
to you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Your valuable time and sharing your knowledge. Now the floor is open for question and answers.
Voice is breaking. Understood, sir. I'm sorry, Rakesh. I did not see the chat message. Social media unstructured, stock information structured. Yes, you're right. The link has been shared. The feedback link has been shared. Thank you, Deepak.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We will.
Thank you, dear participants. Now we will have the valedictory function. Over to Pavitra madam.
Thank you, Suhas. A very good afternoon and warm welcome to all of you for the valedictory function of the 5-day faculty development program on Introduction to Python, organized by the Department of MCA, MIT Mysore. I am Pavitra TS, working as an assistant professor in the Department of MCA, MIT Mysore. I am privileged to be the master of ceremony for this function. I request all the participants to turn on the camera for taking a screenshot for creating a memory of this FTP. Please, all of you. Again, I request all the participants to turn on the camera. Chandresh sir?
Yes. I'm turning it on. Yes, madam. I'm turning it on. 1 second.
Okay. Will you take that screenshot?
1 second, madam. 1 second.
Take the screenshot, sir.
Yes, madam. 1 second. 1 second.
It's time to welcome the gathering for the valedictory function for this. I now request Professor Amos Or to welcome the dignitaries and participants.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon. Myself, Amos, take this privilege to welcome you all for this valedictory function of 5-day FT program on Introduction to Python, organized by the Department of MCA of MIT Mysore. Firstly, I welcome our mentor, Dr. T. Vasudev, for this valedictory function. I welcome you, sir. I also I also welcome Professor Munjanath B, the head of the department, the convener of this FTP program. I welcome you, sir. I extend my welcome to all the members of advisory committee and HODs of various departments. I welcome you all. I welcome all the coordinators, my colleagues and other staff who have directly and indirectly helped us in organizing this FTP program successfully. Finally, I welcome all the participants of various parts of India for participating in this FTP program, and I welcome you all for this validatory function. A warm welcome to all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. On behalf of organizing committee, I welcome you, sir. Now I request the convener of the FTP, Professor Manjunath B, to give a brief report on the FTP.
Good afternoon to everyone. Hope I am audible to all. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon to everyone and greetings of the day for each and everyone who are here as participants and dignitaries. Myself, Professor Manjunath B, working as Assistant Professor and Head of the Department in the Department of MCA, MIT Mysore, and Convener of the FTP. So it's my privilege to deliver the report on this FTP on the day of valedictory session right now. So the 5-day faculty development program was an initiative taken by the Department of MCA, MIT Mysore under the guidance of Dr. T. Vasudev. So we chose this topic like introduction to Python because Python is very popular general purpose programming language and has gained its importance as a preferred programming language to develop variety of applications, and it is also used in various research fields. And we felt that this FTP will fulfill the basic requirements of the initial learners and beginners, and we concentrated on the beginners and learners who are from non-CS background also. We identified Dr. Chandrajit and Professor Mahalakshmi as the coordinators for the FTP, and with the support of our patron Dr. B.G. Naresh Kumar, Principal, advisory committee members and the organizing committee members, we have successfully come to the end of this FTP. On a short note, that the FTP was inaugurated on the 20th December 2021 at 1:30 p.m. by our President Dr. Yash Murali, along with the presence of Dr. B.G. Naresh Kumar, Principal of MIT Mysore, Dr. T. Vasudev, Professor and Dean Administration, and also Secretary of MIT Mysore, and along with the advisory committee members and organizing committee members, participants and colleagues graced the occasion. Now we are proud to mention that the total number of registrations for the FTP was around 150 plus, and most of the participants were interested, and there were like more than 80 plus participants every day in the session. Then some of the pan-India participants were also there from various states like Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Odisha, and etc. So in the first day, first session, the introduction to Python, which was handled by Dr. T. Vasudev, showed the lights on. He showed the lights of expressions, data types, operators, input and output functions, and he did it very well. Then on the second day, Professor Mahalakshmi gave a wonderful orientation regarding the topics, flow control, functions, and modules. On day 3, Professor Sharath did a lot of explanation about strings, lists, and tuples, whereas the topics like sets, dictionary, class definition, constructor, and inheritance was explained by Professor Shomshekhar. And on the final day, Dr. Chandrajit has conveyed you regarding the file handling, database connectivity, and useful libraries, which are covered with the practical examples. So we are here to conclude the 5-day FTP, which was executed in an effective manner, and we believe that it was useful to the participants, and we, the Department of MCA, will come up with similar type of FTPs and workshops in future, and we wish many more faculties will take part in these programs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for the FDP report. I now request any two participants for giving the feedback about the 5-day FDP. Again, I now request any two participants for giving feedback about 5-day FDP.
Hello, good afternoon to all. Myself, Yogesh Kumar. The 5-day FTP program on Introduction to Python was very wonderful and well organized. I thank all the organizers for coordinating the event wonderfully. It helped me a lot because I am a beginner in learning the Python. The expectation of what I had before participating in a FTP was almost achieved. I am from a mechanical engineering department, but even though I am out of domain, it was very useful for me, and all the codings and the basic information was well given by the resource persons. I thank all the coordinators and the resource persons for organizing such a wonderful Thank you, madam. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm audible, sir?
Thank you, sir.
So I'm audible, ma'am?
Yes, madam, yes.
Yes, madam, you are audible.
Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Shalini MK, Assistant Professor, Department of Computer Science, Shesharippuram Degree College, Mysore. I'm thankful to Department of Master of Computer Application, Maharaja Institute of Technology, Mysore, for organizing this 5 days faculty development program on the topic of Introduction to Fundamentals. In this workshop, in this faculty development program, the resource persons will give the information of fundamental concept of functions, fundamental concepts and functions using Python with a set of examples, which makes all the participants to understand Python language easily. And more than this, the program was, the faculty development program was very well structured in terms of the content, and that was taught in all the sessions, and also with a proper time management. Once again, my sincere thanks to all the organizing chair. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for the valuable feedback. Thanks once again. Now I request our beloved mentor, Dr. T. Vasudev sir, Professor and Dean Administration, to address the gathering.
So good afternoon to one and all. Of course, I was just watching these days through which this FTP program was organized. And of course, the motive behind organizing this is to provide the fundamentals of Python programming to the non-computer science background people. So I think the purpose was served, and probably whatever the things that have been delivered during this program may not be that to that extent where you can really get the core requirement of programming. So at least the gist of programming probably would have been understood by many of the non-computer science background people. So I hope with what purpose the intention, with the intention the program was organized is definitely achieved. That's what I felt. And of course, I also realized that there is a point of disappointment to the people who are really have some knowledge about programming and some programming skills which they have acquired through some other programming language. For them, we are not, I don't think we are given a full some set of the stuff that is required for that. So I do understand the constraints that we had for this program, because the intention was to provide the programming fundamentals of Python to the learners. So I hope in this regard all the people who worked behind this have a satisfaction. With this, I thank organizers for structuring such a
useful program, especially during this what you call as an odd hours of the day. And with this, I think we are also motivated to take up some more activities, especially the physical programs rather than in this online. So I hope the situations will get back to normal, and hope we all meet physically and then share our the ideas or the resources that we have to the people who definitely require the need of programming knowledge. So with this, I share my few words with you. So I thank all the organizers inviting me for this concluding session. I thank one and all. So that's all from my side. I hand over back to the organizers.
Thank you very much, sir. We have come to an end of the valedictory function of the 5-day FTP on Introduction to Python. It's time to thank the august audience. I call upon Professor Ashwin HM, Assistant Professor, Department of MCA, MIT Mysore, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, madam. Good evening, one and all. We are at the verge of 5-day FTP program. Myself, Ashwin HM, Assistant Professor, I am privileged to convey thanks to all who made this 5-day program a successful one. Indeed, it's a special day for all of us for being part of the valedictory function of the 5-day faculty development program on Introduction to Python, organized by Department of MCA, MIT Mysore. First and foremost, we would like to thank our mentor, Dr. T. Vasudev, for gracing this valedictory function. Thank you for guiding us throughout the FTP. Thank you very much, sir. We would like to take this opportunity to thank management for supporting this event on all aspects. Thank you very much, sir. Big thanks to our respected principal, Dr. B.G. Naresh Kumar, for supporting and encouraging us to do this event. Thank you, sir. Special thanks to our department head and convener of the FTP, Professor Manjunath B, for his constant motivation, guidance, and support for making this a successful event. Thank you, sir. A very special thanks to Dr. Chandrajit M and Professor Mahalakshmi M, coordinators of this event. They have been working on this event from past 15 days with every in-detail preparation. They are really happy seeing this event reach its final leg with all success. A big thanks to both of you, madam. A great thanks to resource persons from Department of ISC, Professor Sharath HY and Professor Somshekar BM for their exuberant sessions on 3rd and 4th day. Thank you, sir. We would like to thank all advisory committee members for their guidance. Thank you, sir. A special thanks to Professor Yogesh Kumar, Assistant Professor, Mechanical Department, for helping this FDP reach Pan-India, through which we are able to get 200 registrations and a consistent participation of 85 to 90 members on all 5 days. On behalf of entire organizing team, I thank all the participants from Pan-India for their great participation and enthusiasm for complete 5 days successfully. Thank you all. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to thank our non-teaching staff for offline support. I want to state that we are all most grateful to all dignitaries, heads of various departments, colleagues, for their valuable presence. We thank you for being with us all the time. Thank you very much to all of you. I wish you a great learning experience further. Thank you all. Thank you, madam.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Once again, thank you one and all. Jai Hind, Jai Karnataka.